I have a question about the concept 3. Is this a swinging panel?
That's a good question. We talked about that actually at the VRRB meeting about changing the way that is actually structured, knowing that if it's a swinging panel, that may cause people to want to come by and swing on it or swing it off or whatever the case may be. So we talked about maybe securing it to the bottom of the sign with steel posts, something to that degree that's more secure, that you can't just cart off.
We don't anticipate this being an internally illuminated panel, do we, or do we?
No, sir. If we had illumination, it would be from the ground coming up.
Where do we see these? What medium? Is it sandblasted wood? What do we see that panel being?
I think we would look for whatever would be a good value and also low maintenance as well. I think we've had some issues with wood signs in the past where it's a lot of maintenance and painting and things like that. So we try to find some type of material that may last longer.
So David, were you alluding to concept 3 being modified so that the sign would be mounted more as it is in concept 1 from below?
Yes, sir.
To get rid of the horizontal support arm?
Correct.
That's what I thought.
It'd be mounted more like concept 1 that you see before you.
I move approval of concept 3.
Which one?
Yet to be determined. We don't have to pick from among those, right? It's just a concept.
I think, as I mentioned, the lights on top.
Well, that won't be part of it. That's already a given, correct?
Right. So really, the 3 that you see around the left, top left, and bottom right are all the same,
right,
except for the light on top of the other 2. So really, that's the concept. The other concept that you have to the top of the one that's circled right now on your screen is really just if we don't have enough right-of-way, we may be able to fit a smaller sign in there. But we could obviously look at that on a case-by-case basis. But the theme, the design that you're approving would be able to work with that.
Yeah, and I have an additional comment. I mean, I have the motion out there, but the stylistic sign on concept 1 would also be quite suitable in concept 3 rather than a plain rectangular sign. I still move to support concept 3.
Well, I'll second that.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is ordinances. First one is ordinance 10-14, an amendment to the Farragut zoning ordinance, chapter 4, section 7, elderly housing, to reduce front yard setback requirements on local streets. Bearden Land Company applicant.
Elderly housing has separate regulations from the base zone in which it's allowed in, and the elderly housing is currently permitted within the R6, which is our apartment zoning district, C1, C13, and the planned commercial development district. Because there's varying setbacks in all these districts, the elderly housing section had a different setback requirement, and there's also a buffer strip requirement around the property. And the purpose of the buffer strip is twofold, one of which is to act as a noise buffer, but also to provide a more aesthetically pleasing view for the residents of such a facility. The applicants in this particular case are actually planning to build a facility on Concord Road. And as part of the development, they're going to be building a new road that will be running perpendicular to Concord Road. And they will be maintaining the setbacks, actually greater than the setbacks along Concord Road. But they were looking for a reduced setback on the local road, mostly because the traffic is of low volume, and they didn't feel that it was necessary to meet such a large setback requirement. The staff and the Planning Commission felt that the setbacks should be of adequate size to ensure the viability of the 35-foot buffer strip, and that it should also be greater than whatever is in the base zoning district. We have several districts in town where we have a tiered setback requirement depending on the road classification, having a greater setback along arterials and then the least setback along local streets. Ordinance 1014 reflects this. We opted to go with maintaining the 80-foot setback along arterials, and arterials are roads like Concord Road, Campbell Station Road, Kingston Pike, Watt Road. 70 feet on major collectors, 60 feet on local collectors, and 50 feet on local streets. The Planning Commission recommended unanimously in support of Ordinance 1014.
Discussion?
I was just curious how much elderly housing we have right now in the town of Farragut, any kind of a feel for volume?
Right now, our two facilities, well, we have three facilities, take that back, because if you include nursing homes, though elderly housing is specifically separate from nursing home, NHC as the assisted living, and then we also have the West
Parkview.
Parkview apartments that are located on the eastern side of town. I know that the nursing home that is located on North Hobbs, they have talked about having an assisted living, but they actually went through the rezoning and dissolved the property lines and everything, but they haven't actually proceeded with construction. This particular facility is actually going to be a memory care facility that they're talking about.
Of what?
A memory care facility, like for Alzheimer's patients.
Ruth, obviously, in considering elderly housing, there's always a safety issue there, if the residents are being ambulatory. And so, in your opinion, these recommended changes aren't going to any way compromise the safety of the right-of-way, et cetera, surrounding these facilities? You're satisfied that won't be an issue?
No, I do not feel that that would be an issue at all. By maintaining the greater setbacks along the more heavily traveled roads, I feel that was more of an issue, and the Planning Commission agreed with that.
Do you have a motion?
I move that we approve Ordinance 1014 as attached.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is Ordinance 10-12 and 10-12R, an amendment to the Farragut zoning ordinance, Chapter 3, to create a new C2OD Regional Commercial District, Outlet Drive District. Falconeer Design applicant.
Ordinances before you are a little bit different because we had kind of a modified request, but we did not have the initial request withdrawn at the time when it was presented to the Planning Commission. The initial request that was before the Planning Commission, as stated in the memo to you, requested that there be a new district that accessed Outlet Drive, that the westernmost corner would be no more than 4,000 linear feet from the center line of the I-40/75 level road interchange, and that the property line be contiguous with the interstate, that the area regulations be allowed at 90%, that the stormwater for C2 except to allow reuse of existing buildings and parking without modifications to the stormwater accommodations, and then setbacks the same as C2 with the exception of the that the rear setback would be reduced to 25 feet. The first ordinance, 1012, reflects this request, and in reviewing that request, the primary purpose of this request is the illegal non-conforming sign for the hotel. And so the goal was that there'd be a separate district. Then this would be followed by a subsequent amendment to create that district would be allowed to have the pylon signs. Some of you remember that we'll be updating our land use and transportation policy plan, and we all feel that the Outlet Drive Snyder Road area will merit more study. Snyder Road and Outlet Drive will be connected eventually, and to piecemeal a district that really just accommodates one business rather than meeting the needs of the town really is short-sighted, and it's not appropriate to do at this time. With regards to the lot coverage, the 70% lot coverage is the norm within most of our zoning districts. What's on the screen before you is an example of a lot, and the first picture shows the 20%, the 70% lot coverage, and what that shows is a 20-foot green strip all the way around except for a small portion in the back. The front yard automatically requires a 20-foot green strip, and that's called our perimeter buffers, and then the side yards have a minimum of 10 feet. The 70% lot coverage allows those requirements to be met in addition to the other landscaping requirements within our zoning ordinance. The 90% lot coverage basically would just have the 20-foot grass strip in the front would be met, and then the rest would be completely impervious. The only other districts we have with greater than 70% is the C2RW district with a lot coverage of 75%. That is what they requested. However, the ultimate site plan showed only a 70% lot coverage because of meeting other requirements with stormwater detention. And then our town center district, which has an 80% lot coverage, but that is designed as a downtown, and there's actually some additional requirements with regards to that. Currently, with regards to the stormwater facilities, if there's no modifications to a property, they do not have to accommodate the stormwater. It is only when they redevelop the site that they have to accommodate the stormwater. And that's not just a Farragut requirement, but that is actually a statewide requirement. The Planning Commission recommended denial of Ordinance 10-12. The second modified request is really a de facto sign ordinance because they are asking for absolutely everything the same as the C2 district, except that they be afforded the same opportunities that are within the C2 district at the interstate interchange with Campbell Station Road. Per our zoning ordinance, there is no distinction in any of the C2 districts. The only distinction is actually within our sign ordinance, which states that within 500 feet of the I-40/75 Campbell Station Road interchange, and that black circle on the overhead around the interchange shows that 500 feet. If there is a building located within that 500 feet, they are allowed a pylon sign. We actually have two hotels. The Hampton Inn is under construction, and the Holiday Inn Express are outside of the 500 feet, and they do not have the pylon signs. In addition, the hotel that's in question, or the property that's in question, is actually located directly across the interstate from land that is in the city of Knoxville. And there are two hotels in the city of Knoxville, and the development in that area. I think the next picture shows that area. I'm not sure if you, no, we missed one. That shows the area. It would include the West Plaza Inn and Suites and the Cotton Eye Joe's, and then also a small portion of the land that is immediately west of West Plaza Inn. Currently there is not a property line, but if you did put a property line at the 4,000 feet distance from there, you would still have a lot that met the minimum lot size. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended denial of Ordinance 10-12R. Did not feel this is actually a de facto sign ordinance. The sign ordinance text amendment has already been denied by the Planning Commission, the Visual Resources Review Board, and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen.